Hi everyone and welcome back for another video. Following our previous video where we discussed how to generate network device configurations, we didn't discuss how to protect your code from breaking. So in today's video, we will be discussing how to safeguard your code when using Netmiko by using something called try except block. Basically, the benefits of using try and except is error handling. And the primary purpose of this block is to handle errors gracefully. Instead of letting a program crash when an error occurs, you can use these blocks to catch and manage exception, allowing you to have a smooth and continued program. It also allows you to define alternative paths for fallback mechanisms when certain operations fails. And another benefit to use these blocks of code is to debug and logging information about the error itself, which makes it easy to debug an issue. Not to mention the ability to log in the details about the exception itself, such as the error message and the context that aids to identify and fixing the actual problem. In addition to this, instead of presenting the user with cryptic error messages or stack traces, you can catch the exception and provide meaningful error message or instructions to end users, which enhances the user experience. Finally, exception handling is particularly useful in situations where there uncertainty about the success of an operation, so it provides a mechanism for dealing with failures while ensuring that the overall program execution continues. So what you see on the screen right now is the code I created with you in my previous video, and I shared the link of the video in the description below for those who would like to see how this code been created or to just follow along. So the first use case that I would like to show you is what happens when everything is working as expected and we have built everything and have no errors in terms of data input, etc., etc. So what I have done under global underscore functions following our previous video is I have commented out these two, as you can see on the screen, these two lines, and I have created a new line which is in 55 where I'm going to find the prompt of each router and each device that I have in my inventory file. And if I go quickly and show you my inventory file, I've got my inventory files consist of three different routers. We have router A and router B and router C. And what I'm going to do, I'm going back to my script and I'm going to execute the script. And as you can see, we've managed to get or to print out the prompt for each device. We have router A and we have router B and we have router C. So what I want to do next is what happens if I then go back to my inventory list and change the IP address such that it's not reachable. So I'm certain that this IP address doesn't even exist. And if I were to ping it, it would not be successful. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to my script and I'm going to execute it and see what's going to happen. What you see on the screen here is the traceback of the exception that occurred when we tried to communicate or connect to device 192.168.1.20 at port 22. And the problem of this is that there is no connectivity. It says that TCP connection to device have failed. And the common cause of this problem is that maybe we have put or included incorrect hostname or IP address, which we already know that we actually done that, or the wrong TCP port that has been provided, or maybe there is a problem with a firewall blocking the access to the end device. But the main problem that we see right now is that the application or the program itself has stopped halfway through, because as you can see, we've managed to only get the prompt for our first device, which is router-A, and we couldn't get to the third device, which is router-C. And that is one of the reasons why we should consider using try except block. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to go back to my inventory file. I will rectify this issue by removing the 0 from the IP address. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to change the device type. So instead of using Cisco underscore iOS, I'm going to say Juniper as an example. And then I'll go back to my script and I would execute that again. As you can see on the screen, we get a different error message, and this time it's very vague and very generic, that you wouldn't be able to actually tell what actually is the problem. And if I scroll up, you can see the traceback from the top all the way to the bottom, and it's very hard to actually understand what is the actual reason of causing the actual program to fail. So what I'm going to do next, I am actually going to fix the inventory file. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to change the port number from 22 maybe 24. And then execute that again. And again, we get like a problem with the actual TCP connection, much like what we had with the IP address when we changed it from 192.168.1.2 to .20. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to change that to 22. And what I'm going to do next, I'm going to go back to my router and I am going to actually change the transport input from SSH to just telnet. So if I say show run include section line, and what I'll do, I'll say configure terminal line VTY028, and I want to say transport input telnet. Right now, my inventory looks good. And if I were then to execute this, you can see that we get a problem. It doesn't tell me what is the actual issue. Again, this is not a user-friendly error message, not to mention that the program hasn't continued to the last action, which is not what we want, by the way. So what I would do, I'll go back and rectify this, and I'm gonna just arrow up and say SSH. I'm going to just double check that this actually has changed, which it has, and then I will execute that again. So everything should be working fine. We get all 3 prompts for each of our devices. In order for us to fix this issue, what we can do, we can then go ahead and include a couple of modules or a couple of libraries from Netmiko. So we would say from Netmiko dot exceptions, I want to import authentication exceptions. I also want to say from netmiko.exceptions, I want to import SSH exceptions. In the main function under the for loop that go through each device, I need to include the try catch block. So, or the try except block. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to say try, and I'm going to indent all the code that I need to protect it from crashing inside the try block, and I'm going to say except, and the first error handling check is going to be connection refused error, and I will say as error, and here I'm going to say print error connection refused. And what I will do, I will print the error, and also I'm going to concatenate the device IP address. So I will say each device, open closing square brackets, and I'm going to specify the host. We could also concatenate that with IP address, sorry, the host name. So I'm going to say something like this. I'll just copy that and I'll paste it in here. And instead of using the host key, I want to use the host name key. I'm going to say that. And that is the first exception that I would like to use. The second exception, I'm going to say except authentication exception as error. And I need to say print error. And I would say authentication failed. And also I'm going to print the error message that we get. And again, I will concatenate that with the relevant information about the device in question. I will do the same thing for the SSH exception. And I would say print, say as error. And in here, I'm going to say SSH error. SSH might not be enabled. And then I will say error. And again, I will concatenate that with host name and the IP address of the device in question. I will also say except, and then we're going to say timeout error as error. This will actually protect my script from timing out with an error of. This block of exception will help me understand if the connection have timed out to the end device. So I would say print f and then error connection time out. I will also include the variable error, and I will concatenate that again with the device information. And then finally, we just need to add a generic exception to catch any errors that we haven't thought about, let's say. So we would say error or exception as error. And we're going to say exception type as a local variable equal to type, and we would say error dot and then underscore name. And then what we need to do, we can just print the actual exception. And at this point, we should be able to be protected. This way, we will make sure that our code will run all the way to the end. So let's just execute the script and test it. And we should not get any issues at all. As you can see on the screen, we got router A prompt, we got router B prompt, and we got router C prompt. And then what I want to do next is I want to go back to my inventory, and what I'm going to do first thing is I'm going to add the 0 there, go back to my script and execute that again. Okay, so you can see that we carried on to the third device here, and we haven't actually thrown a traceback exception to the end user, so it's a little bit cryptic, let's say. And you can see that there is actually a user-friendly message where it indicates that there is a problem with the SSH not being able to actually reach the end device. So if I then go back to my inventory, get rid of that 0, and then let's say that I'm going to actually deliberately change my credentials such that cause it to fail, let's see what is going to happen. Right. So again, we continue to the third device with no issues. The application doesn't stop halfway through. And we can see here the error, it says authentication failed. So at this point, you would understand that there is actually a problem with the user credentials, and then you can go ahead and fix it instantly. So if I go back and fix the user credentials, and then maybe change this from Cisco underscore iOS to Juniper, execute the script again, you can see that it couldn't actually detect any error because it couldn't read out the actual prompt. And the reason for that is we know that the device type has changed. And because of that, it couldn't actually detect the prompt of the Cisco device. Now, if I then were to rectify the inventory again and change that from Juniper to Cisco iOS, and if I go back and do the same thing again for my router B configuration, so if I say configure terminal and say line VTY028, and we can say we don't want SSH, we just want telnet, and then try this again. So you can see here that it says here SSH might not be enabled, and therefore we would need to troubleshoot SSH to the end device. And also not to mention that we've managed to actually carry on all the way to the last device from our inventory list. So if I go back and change this again, change it from telnet to SSH. Let's say that we want to use a different port, for instance. So instead of using port 22, we can use port 24. And we can go ahead and execute this. So you can see that the error still stands saying that SSH might not be enabled, TCP connection to device failed, try to troubleshoot these steps. But the beauty of it is that we carry on working and we don't actually cause the script to crash and to stop halfway through. That's it for today's video, guys. I hope you found this video helpful. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications so you never miss our future tutorials and tech insights. If you have any questions, comments, feel free to drop a comment below. I read all your comments and I'm here to assist you. So stay curious, stay inspired, and until next time, peace.